Right, Emmanuelle. It's been a while, hasn't it? Since
Yeah, time flies.
we've seen each other. Yeah, it's it's a whole kind of new lockdown vibe. Oh, and there goes my intro music again. That's interesting. All right. Much as I like my song, I don't like it.
So do I. It's
Right.
always nice to hear first day. Brings back a lot of memories as well. So yeah,
Of course,
nice.
yeah. It was a time flies. I don't know, four something years ago. Um, What's been happening? Because I haven't seen you for ages. I've seen a few of your posts. How is it over there? How are you able to? How's it functioning with work? Are there any festivals? What's happening?
Oh, it's a bit quiet because in January it's usually very, very quiet on the music scene around here. So that's the perfect time to try and catch up on all the editing and uh, like computer work around photography that I haven't had time to do earlier. So it's nice to have kind of a break from shooting concerts because last year's been very busy
Yes,
from June till the end of the year. So yeah.
it sounds like, and I love that it was so busy because we were still kind of negotiating lockdown and post-lockdown. So what were you doing last year that was so busy? Were festivals still going ahead over there?
Some of them did happen, which was really nice. And so, yes, I did maybe 4 or 5 festivals from late June till November, actually. The last one was in November. So it was really, really nice to be back to shooting live music and seeing live music and musicians on stage rather than behind your screen when you're in lockdown, stuck at home.
And that's quite different. You did do some really uh, eye-catching photographs of flowers and landscape and your garden. I mean, you have got an extraordinary landscape. Is this from your? Is this the view from your window, from your sitting room window? Let's see if I move. Sometimes it just shows the white wall, which is not particularly complementary to the photo, and other times people get to see the photo. Let's see what happens this time.
Yes. Yeah, very, very lucky me. I actually took that photo from my garden. Yes, that's actually the view I've got from my desk when I'm working.
It's
So
yeah.
I try not to look at it too much, otherwise I don't work.
Well, I notice how you've taken, obviously, it's never going to be a dull landscape photo around Chamonix. It's always extraordinary, really. And you capture the subtleties of the of difference. How do you go about doing that? What interests you when you have the landscape as a theme? Well, you have it at your fingertips every day. What kinds of differences do you like to notice? What do you like to play around with?
Clouds, just like on that one, different and interesting clouds, or sunsets, when sometimes the mountains just turn kind of pink or red or bright orange, like they're on fire. Or maybe at dawn when it's a very delicate shade of pink. So it's, yeah, usually when it's just bright blue skies, it's not that interesting. I mean, you can do it once, but then when I see clouds coming in, I'm like, I might take the camera out and keep watch.
Because you've taken a lot. If I lived there, I would. I'm sure they wouldn't necessarily look like your photos, but it's an irresistible subject matter, isn't it, Chamonix? It's really beautiful. I know that you have that you obviously you take a lot of musicians as well, but with the landscape, and also remember because you took my cover, which is wonderful, which is we chose a photo, didn't we, that was all the way round because
Mm.
after working on that album, what seemed to really be overwhelming was the landscape, and it enveloped the project, and I really wanted to represent that live, and you did that beautifully. But I remember what you said, that you, because we were looking at the lighting, and I can remember you saying that you don't like it to, which I notice in this, you don't really like to highlight, it can be a bit obvious to highlighted, is that right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
So you
I
tend,
mean, the clouds and the when the light is not just bright, sunny, and yeah, with blue skies, the light gets more interesting as well. So yeah, that's probably what I said. And also, I remember that you wanted the mountains around, and you wanted the river.
oh yes, and there weren't that many shots to get everything in, were there? But I
Yeah.
do think I love that you said that, because it's a very obvious, and I'm always drawn to, lots of people are drawn to bright sunny days and blue skies. It's quite a kind of instinctive and superficial in a way, but an instinctive default. Probably it's just the vitamin D, especially this time of the year. It's quite instinctive to be drawn to that. But I loved what you. I was very interested as a creative in that you like the subtlety, like you said, of not over highlighting things, and of not over lighting things. Well, it's not necessarily, it's subjective whether it's overlit, but of not highlighting. I think we just used that phrase, didn't we? Highlight. I don't know what the different options are. In is it Adobe Photoshop? Is that what you use, or what's the latest thing?
It's Adobe, but it's more Lightroom than Photoshop. For me, both work. You can use both, but I prefer Lightroom. Lightroom is like being in the lab developing your photos, like they did in the old days.
Is it?
Yes, it's really what they used to do with all the chemicals and in the dark room. So they called it Lightroom, but it should be really dark room, what the dark room used to be. And Photoshop is more when you want to experiment a little bit more with your photo, like remove something that you don't like, or add something, or blend different shots together. So I don't really do that, not really, not often. So I'm more into Lightroom. Yeah.
Is that
And
the
it's
kind of
amazing the difference you can, the different edits you can make out of one shot. It's quite interesting because you can really experience in the Lightroom after you've actually taken the shot. So I like both things, going out and shooting, and then being back behind my screen and working in the Lightroom, and trying to find what kind of editing suits the shot best.
Oh, yeah, it's interesting you say suits the shot best, because you're trying to pay kind of homage to bringing it out for what you feel it is, rather than, as you said, Photoshop. There's all sorts of ways of modifying and altering and playing around with the image. I'm curious when you say, when you talk about it being like the dark room. So is that more in terms of the development then of the photo, in terms of different ways of, well, not exact exposure wouldn't be exposure exactly, but just different ways of, is it how much you develop the photo? Because it's digital, I don't know whether it'd be the same exactly.
Well, yes, it is the same. The image that you get out of your camera is like when you got the film out of your film camera back in the day, and you really had to develop the film before you could have the negative and print it. So it's just the same, only it's all digital instead of being chemicals in a dark room.
That's fascinating. And do you have several versions of the same photo? How does it work? Or because it is the same as a darkroom, that you only have one, what was the old word for it? The negative, basically. Do you have one that you can work on, or can you copy it and then work on lots? That would be the digital option, which you wouldn't have got originally.
Exactly. The digital option is to make as many virtual copies as you need. So yeah, you've got your original file, and then you can have different virtual copies and try out things. You can try black and white, you can try sepia, you can try anything you want, and you can have like 10 versions. And I remember when we did some work together on was it, I think it was the photo that was on your first album, on the inside of the booklet. You
Okay.
had some photos illustrating every song, each
Yes.
song. And the one we did together, I remember we tried like maybe 20 different versions before we found one that suited your idea of what you wanted, and also the general mood of the booklet. Do you
Mm,
remember the
mm.
one while you're walking on the beach?
I do remember that, yes. Yeah, I remember we did a couple of versions because we also did that one that was a mistake, but it looked amazing. Can you remember the one outside the tape where all the light was all over the place? And it's but it was interesting how it had developed, how it had come out. Um, yeah, they were both interesting in their different ways. The mistakes can be, do you deal with mistakes, Emmanuelle, or are you too kind of meticulous and you're quite quick to think, no, that I know I was doing a mistake there, I can't spend time on it?
Well, sometimes it's so bad that you really can't do anything. You can't save it. But I've got a few shots that I remember very vividly thinking, oh no, there's a problem with that one. And then in the end, with a bit of editing, it turned out great. So sometimes I like mistakes, and sometimes it's just something that you didn't see when you were shooting. And when you look at the image on the screen and you're like, oh, I never thought that would be interesting, but in the end, it is for such and
Mm,
such reasons. So yeah, I like
yeah.
mistakes.
Yeah, our biases can get in the way. Well, it's fair enough sometimes because we've got a vision for something, and it's not conforming to that, and so that's fair enough if you if you want to discard it for that reason. But it's always quite interesting to be open to mistakes. I can remember, in music, but it was a big thing that I can't remember her name now. Christina Aguilera, actually, that song "Beautiful." But I remember, I can imagine anyone that's really meticulous in their craft. I could imagine it being this being a susceptibility to throw away things that aren't manifesting the vision that you had. And I just remember that was part of why she didn't like her probably number one single "Beautiful," but the producer managed to persuade her to keep it in with all supposedly cracks in her voice and everything. Doesn't sound like that. Still sounds pretty professional to me, the way that she delivered it. But of course, you do a lot more than landscapes, because I know that it's a passion of yours to do musicians, and you said you did four festivals. And what is it about? And you said before that you love the movement. What is it? What is it? Tell us more about what it is you like about shooting musicians.
Well, I love music and I love seeing live music. So obviously that's one thing, because when you go to a concert and you really enjoy the experience and you're a photographer, obviously you want to catch some of the moments that you really enjoy watching when you're seeing musicians live on stage. And also because I like the craft. So I like the way musicians hold their instrument, if they play an instrument, or hold their mic, if they sing, or the way they, I don't know, the expression on their faces and the way they move, and the way they interact when there's more of one on stage, when there's a band, or when there's more than, when it's not a solo act. I like the way they interact together. And sometimes you can catch a moment when something different happens, and it's really something that I like. And also you've got all the stage lights, and that's interesting as well, because you can play with the musicians but also with the lights.
So you've done a lot, so many. I've seen so many of your photos, and they reflect exactly what you just said. You get capture really in kind of unexpected, to my mind, unexpected stances and expressions and just ways that they're holding things. I can remember you said you were quite preoccupied with hands at one point, and the way that different, maybe it might have been specific to singers, were holding their mics. But I love that you. Well, I didn't exactly know, but it makes perfect sense now that you said it's the craft of being a musician and studying that subject matter in all its different ways of manifesting. Obviously, being a musician, it's not something I think about at all, because well, I mean, I do think about the craft, but I don't think about how that manifests visually. I would, I suppose, if I was doing a show, but not as me as subject matter, not like the way I'm holding a mic. That's probably the last thing on my mind, unless it's impeding for any reason the way that I'm singing, in which case I might automatically shift some microphone technique without knowing what I'm doing. But that's something that you would be more likely to notice than me. I would be doing it, but you'd be probably more likely to notice because you've taken so many wonderful photos. What's your Instagram? You've got Instagram, all your social medias, because you've got 2 different accounts, haven't you?
Yes, the music photography account is anatoly.musicphotography, and the other one is anatoly.photography with the music in the middle. Yeah, I've done 2 because it's so different. Landscape and street photography and music. Music is very specific, and I couldn't really picture having all my photography on the same account. So yeah, music is has its own account.
And how do you think your photos have evolved from when you started? Because I can see differences. I wouldn't specifically be able to say pinpoint what they are, but how do you feel they've evolved since you started your music photos?
That's a good question. I think the more you do, the more you know what to look for during a gig. Like you know that at the beginning, musicians are normally a little bit stiffer than they will be later. So I'm always annoyed when the rules that the photographers are given are like first 3 songs. That's a bit sad because mostly the interesting part is after that. But so sometimes I like to wait, and now I know how to just hold my horses and wait until we really get into the show and musician starts to relax and things start to happen. So I know how to look for that now, that maybe I couldn't really wait a few years ago. I was like, oh, it's starting. So that's a bit different now, and also the gear is different. I've got a much better camera now that allow me to take more. Sorry,
what camera are you using now?
I've got 2 Sony cameras that are really, really good for action photography, be it music or sports or anything that moves. And I'm really happy with that because now I can really capture people jumping around or really moving fast, even if it's dark, which is a big problem for us photographers. But anyway, so
Although
I'm really
you did
happy
pretty
with that.
well, because I remember in Maison des Arts quite a lot of the time the lighting wasn't favorable, and you really, I mean, it's a brilliant way to learn when you've got a very adverse environment to learn.
Absolutely, it's a challenge. Yeah.
And have you noticed, have you noticed differences in environment between, say, for example, a festival? Presumably, there must be different considerations between a festival and a small venue, and then you've done arenas because you've done Duran as well, haven't you? Not just Duran, you did Jamiroquai, didn't you, when we were over there?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, thanks to you.
You've done a lot more since then, Emmanuelle. It's wonderful.
Yeah, well, it is different depending on the venue, and if it's a small venue, if it's a big arena, if it's a festival, it is different. And sometimes we can get pretty close to the stage, like in the crash in front of the stage. Sometimes we have to shoot from a bit farther, and sometimes when it's a small venue, you're literally on the stage. So that's another thing I like. Every show is different. So you go to a show and you don't know what's going to happen. Where will I be able to go? Where will I be forbidden to go? How high will the stage be? How will the musicians use the stage? Because sometimes they're like in the back, sometimes they come to the front. So every time it's different. And even for having been to quite a lot of Duran shows, even if you see like 2 or 3 in a row, it's never the same. Never, never, never. And that's something I like as well, that it's always different and always something else is going to happen. I love that.
Yes, there can be that assumption when it's the same, theoretically the same show, but of course it's never ever the same. That's what I love about it as well. When we do quite a few shows, one, the actual venue is often is a different venue, but so there's different practical things. But even if we were in the same thing, I can remember when we did Broadway every night, and every show is always different. And I love the fluidity and the spontaneity about music in that sense. And obviously that's reflected in photography. Unfortunately, I did say another meeting, but let's do 2 halves of an interview, because I've got another meeting. So unfortunately, I can't chat because I'd love to chat. Let's just cheers though, because this is the first interview that I thought it'd be a great idea to incorporate, especially ever kind of invisible drinks. That's handy. That could be terrible because people won't know how much. Cheers, Emmanuelle.
Cheers, Anna.
Yeah. What's happening? So what's coming up for you this year? And you said you're hoping to do more prints. Yeah. So I hope. Yeah, I'm really want to support and encourage that. What's your inspiration this year, and also what do you think? Okay, right. Well, what's for me this year? Is it more of festivals, because as you said they're never the same, or are there certain things you specifically think, you know what, I do want to focus a bit more on that this year?
There will be festivals and gigs and musicians, that's for sure. I would like to do a little bit more of the behind the scenes photos, because I was allowed to photograph some sound checks last year, and I found this very interesting as well. And the feedback from the musicians was really good as well. And at first they were a bit like, oh my God, someone's shooting us when we're not necessarily ready for it. And then when they saw the images, they were like, oh, but that's great, because we're different and we like it. So I would like to do more of that, not specifically gigs, but what happens before or after, and around as well, do some sessions to shoot some promo photos or photos for our albums or whatever. I would like to do more of that. And also, yes, do prints, but prints would be more for the landscape or street photography, because it's a bit complicated to do prints with people on them. So it would be mostly landscape or street.
Well, that's
a big project.
Yeah, I really look forward to seeing some, because I know that you spoke about it a little bit last year, but obviously you've been so busy, and it's really inspiring how much you've committed to photography and making that permanent just focus for yourself and for your life, and it's wonderful. Long may it continue. Cheers, Emmanuelle. Are you on wine or are you on
kombucha?
Kombucha. Okay, well I'm on the wine. Although I
would if I had a bottle just open, I would as well, but I don't have one. So
well, I'm sure we will again in the future. So yeah. Salut.
Salut.
All right, and I'll speak to you soon. Hopefully COVID. Oh goodness knows. Let's just draw a line.
A lot is going to happen this year, and we're going to see a lot of each other, I'm sure.
Yes, yeah, I miss you. All right, lots of love to you, Emmanuelle.
Same to you, and I'll see you soon. Bye.